I hope so, because you're drinking beer, but I have a lot of empty seats right here. So if you want to come sit down, you might be in a better advantage for some giveaways, just saying. But if you don't, it's all good. Okay, so we're really excited to present Brewery Ommegang beers to you tonight, and I'm not sure there's ever been a Brewery Ommegang beer school here. Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, because
5.5 years that I've been back in town.
So,
but that reminds me, there was something I forgot to tell you guys.
Perfect.
What? Ommegang is also the beer of the month. In case you guys didn't notice the window outside, that means every Tuesday you come in, you buy any Ommegang beer, you get a glass to take home. We have all kinds of different glassware we're giving away throughout the month. It's not just your standard pint. It's all kinds of cool goblets and things. So Tuesday nights, that's all I gotta say.
All right, so thank you for moving up front. Okay, we're going to do 4 beers tonight, right, Kelly? Yes. We're on 4, so I'm going to start you, once we start drinking, we're going to start on beers that are all at 9.6%. So be prepared, and we're going to have a couple, we're going to lower it a little in the middle, and then we're going to end on a 9.7% beer. So that's really the fun part of Brewery Ommegang. And I already have a question.
Yeah, are you aware you're doing 2 classes?
I am. And I've already started too, so the second class might be way more exciting, so cheers. Maybe you want to stick around. Okay, so I wanted to give you some background information on Brewery Ommegang, but first I want to transport you 18 years ago. So do I have some youngsters in the room? You may not even know the answers, or this trivia, but I was sitting here thinking about what was going on in 1997, because that's when Brewery Ommegang started. So just a couple little things that have nothing to do with beer for a minute, but I thought this was kind of funny, because 18 years goes fast. The #1 song in the country this week in 1997 was "Can't Nobody Hold Me Down" by Puff Daddy, who since then has probably had 10 names. The top 5 Billboard artists this week in 1997 were Puff Daddy, Spice Girls, Jewel, Celine Dion, and Monica. And the top films were Titanic, Men in Black, Jurassic Park, and Liar Liar. So just think about how much has changed in the last 18 years just with our taste in music and movies. And actually Howard Stern premiered this week in 1997, and I did that for Kelly Boozer because she's a big fan of Howard Stern. And also in the 1990s, there's a revolution of craft beer happening. So in 1997, there were 1,396 breweries operating. That includes microbreweries, brew pubs, regional breweries. Last year, there were 3,464. So that's 1.5 times more breweries than were operating in 1997. And to put that in perspective, in 1980, there were 8 craft breweries. So beer has come a long way in the last 30 years, but especially in the last 20, and all of you have probably experienced just since 2008 how much has changed in our region especially. So going back to 1997, there was this couple, and their names, I gotta make sure I say his name correctly so I don't mess this up, Don and Wendy Littlefield. Don's last name is different, so Don Feinberg. Okay, so in 1997, they had an import company. They were specializing in Belgian beers. And they had lived in Belgium for 3 years right out of college. So they wanted to start a brewery and bring those traditional styles and those Belgian beers to the United States. So they started Brewery Ommegang in Cooperstown, New York. Has anybody been to Cooperstown before? Okay, probably for the Baseball Hall of Fame, I'm going to guess. So if you've never been to Cooperstown or heard of Cooperstown, obviously Baseball Hall of Fame is located there. But historically, a lot of Belgian immigrants had come to the country and settled in the upstate New York region. And in that county, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they produced 80% of the country's hops in that region. So there is they're trying to grow hops again in that region, but Don and Wendy really felt like that area was a great space space for a Belgian brewery. So they built the first farmstead brewery in the United States in over 100 years. Because they imported Belgian beers, they were backed by 3 Belgian breweries. One of them was Duvel Moortgat. If anybody had a Duvel in the room? Okay. Very good. If you haven't, maybe you'll go out and experience that as well, because Duvel Moortgat actually still owns the majority share brewery Ommegang today.
On draft, just in case you guys didn't know.
And that's a
fancy glasses, conservative.
yeah, actually we got a little more, we got a few extra glasses today too. So if you haven't ever experienced Duvel, they were really known for a Belgian strong ale. So in the BJCP guidelines, if you look up that style of beer, Duvel is the gold standard for that beer. So they had a lot of help and expertise in brewing from these 3 breweries, and then Duvel Moortgat purchased them outright. Did you see your friends? Okay. Yeah. Hello. What's your name? Michael. Have you ever had a Ommegang beer before? Oh, very good. Well, you're going to drink it again tonight. And I'm going to have you come tell us about who the 3 philosophers are. So I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So this couple was really a pioneer in bringing these Belgian-style, bottle condition, cork finished beers into the United States. So Brewery Ommegang, that is their specialty. They brew Belgian-style beers. And if you've been in that, if you've experimented in Belgian-style beers, there's really no rules. Between what was available in the ingredients, if you go back to the history of Belgian beers, they use everything. They used whatever grains were available. They used spices. They used fruits. They have a distinctive yeast. They have a lot of wild yeast strains that can change the flavor of the beer. So it's really cool because Belgian beers are just really exciting and different, and sometimes it's just an interpretation of a style, which is kind of what you'll see tonight. So we're going to go through 4 of our beers. 2 of them are available every day. No, 3 of them are available every day. One of them is our Game of Thrones release that just came out. So Game of Thrones fans? Just a couple? I've tried to watch it, but it's a little too intense when you have a 2-year-old at home, because by 10 o'clock I'm pretty much dead, and trying to drink a beer and watch Game of Thrones is 10 o'clock at night doesn't work for me. But I know you're going to do some Game of Thrones trivia, so we're excited to partner with them because HBO actually there was somebody in the HBO production with Game of Thrones that was a huge fan of Brewery Ommegang. So they actually came to us and asked to collaborate with us for this series and brew these beers. So this will be the 5th release of the Game of Thrones series of beers, and it's called Three-Eyed Raven. So we'll have that as our 3rd beer tonight. So anyway, back to Copperstown. So great region for growing hops in the past. So they started this brewery, and then Duvel came along. So our first beer was actually called Ommegang. And today it's known as Abbey Ale. So now Ommegang is brewing 7 beers year-round, 4 seasonals, and then throughout the year we bring out all kinds of different special releases, limited editions, barrel-aged beers, all kinds of just whatever the brewers are in the mood to do that year, whatever's available. They're experimenting with some sour beers and having fun with just making these really cool Belgian-style beers. A lot of it has changed. We did obviously the cork and cage finished 750s. We now serve a lot of our beers on draft as well, and we offer many of our year-rounds in the 4-pack. So it's kind of cool because in the last couple years when Duvel merged with Boulevard, we actually started selling all these beers. So what's cool for us is we've been able to bring more of those beers into St. Louis specifically and share these with you because you have 2 brewery reps living in town. That's basically what the accessibility for you is, that we just had more presence in people in the market, so we could bring more beers and really expose them to you. Yeah.
The ones on draft, CO2 or nitro?
All CO2. Great question. All these beers are really highly carbonated, and you'll notice most of them are going to be in the 6% range or higher. So you're going to have a lot of effervescence, a lot of flavor, but yeah, we don't have any nitro beers either, any stouts right now. We've done some stouts, but they've been bottle only. Okay, so the really cool thing about this couple is to parallel some of the pioneers in the brewing industry. So they went to Belgium right out of college, lived there for 3 years, fell in love with these Belgian-style beers, came back to the United States and started this company and started bringing these beers in. They were the first people to publish Michael Jackson's The Great Beers of Belgium. So if everybody knows Michael Jackson, if you don't, God rest his soul. He's published a lot of great books, and if you ever really want some great beer information, he's got some amazing books out there. So a beer writer, he was kind of the, how should I classify him as, just the
first accessible connoisseur.
And educator of beer. So so they published that book, and they've just been, ever since then, really involved in food and beer. So with Belgian beers, what you'll notice is they're so complex, there's so many great flavors and styles that those beers go amazing with food. So when you're drinking these beers, you might try and think about, what meal could I drink this with? Because these are pretty big beers, so you're not going to probably slam these all night long. So you really are experiencing them, and what flavors are you picking up in these beers and these complex yeast strains, and what you're tasting to pair with some amazing meals, or just beer and pizza, because who doesn't love beer and pizza? So the really cool thing about Brewery Ommegang as well is they've really, in the community, obviously they're promoting beer, they're starting to grow these hops, they're working with some hop growers in the region. They have a cafe on site at the brewery, so they're involved in food and beer pairing. And then if you ever get the opportunity, they do concert series throughout the summer, so if you're up in Copperstown for any reason, make sure you check it out. But they also do a festival every August, and that climate is so amazing. And it's called Belgium Comes to Copperstown. And Wendy started that festival, so fast forward 18 years, it's grown immensely. I don't even remember how many breweries were there. Kelly and I were there last year. It's on the property in the hills in the Otasaga County. It's amazing, and you have all these Belgian beers to taste, and they camp on site. So they promote all these different experiences of the Belgian culture. So basically that means drinking a lot of beer and having a really good time and eating a lot of great food. So who doesn't want to be a part of that? Are you guys are familiar with any of these beers besides, tell me your name again? Michael, who's had 3 Philosophers. Have you guys had any of these year-rounds, like the Abbey Ale, the Gnomegang, the Hennepin? We're kind of familiar. So how many people have had those beers? I'm just trying to get a feel again for the room. Okay, so I've got over half the room that's never had any of these Ommegang beers. This is awesome. You're excited. So one of the other things about Belgian beer is they all have their own distinctive glass. So tonight we're drinking, obviously in a taster, but if you ever look on our website, you'll see, thank you, the different beers and all the different glass, a lot of stemware. You want to pour a little less than maybe a 16-ounce pint at times, so you just want to be familiar with experiencing the beer. So you're having Gnomegang. So this one's really fun. We have a sister brewery in Belgium called Schoof. Anybody heard of Schoof? Yeah. Okay. So Schoof, we make 3 beers year-round right now in a seasonal, and the fun, the energy behind Schoof is that the gnomes live in the brewery at Schoof. And the gnomes made a trip to Copperstown. And our brewers really wanted to play with the gnomes, and so they left their yeast strain behind for us to work with. So Gnomegang is one of the Belgian beers that we brew with the Schoof yeast. And that's in the primary fermentation, and then we have our Ommegang house yeast in the secondary fermentation. So you're getting a collaboration, which is why it's called Gnomegang, of this amazing beer. I'm going to get my little cheat sheet out so I can make sure I tell you all the facts about this beer. So it's a Belgian blonde ale. Has anybody ever looked up like Rate Beer, Beer Advocate, BJCP, style guidelines on craftbeer.com? If you look up a lot of these styles in the Belgian category, you're going to see a lot of these breweries named. So you'll see the Ommegang beers, you'll see the Schoof beers, and you'll see Duvel. So these are really some of the gold standards in these Belgian styles. Except this blonde ale is just like a collaboration of something really fun and exciting. So you're tasting this, well, it's a nice golden color, right? Do you get a lot of these fruity esters? You get a lot of that yeast, a little bit of spice. very typical of what we were talking about with Belgian style beers. It's like the no rules beers. We have the Reinheitsgebot, purity law, and then we have the Belgian law, which is don't follow any of those laws. Do what makes sense and what tastes really good. So you've got a lot of malt, and you've got a 9.5% ABV. So it's a lot of fun, 9.5%. The IBUs, let me check here, because we don't, a lot of these beers are so malty, and these nice soft malts. And the hops they use are a lot of the same hops, and they're the real low aromatics, so the low and just bittering hops. Let me find the IBUs. I don't even know if I have them listed. What is it? Are you on like Untapped? I figured.
Remember when we used to get beers called no?
I don't even know why we don't have IBUs on our sheets. But because it's not, Untapped. Perfect, cheers. 46. So you have this big, these big malty beers. So you're going to have the IBUs. And the great point about 46 IBUs is you probably are used to seeing that in maybe a pale, like a Sierra Nevada or a Boulevard Pale or a pop-up IPA. You're going to see 46 IBUs, and that is a perception. Because do you feel like you're getting 46 IBUs in this beer? Not at all. It's not hoppy. It's not bitter. It just balances out all that sweetness.
I think she said 26, not 46.
Even better. Like Boulevard Pale Ale is 31. And that's a hoppy beer because that's the perception that you're tasting those acids, and that hop is the forward flavor in that beer. And in these, it's all about the malt. And they actually, so we don't have these big, rich, oatmeal, over-the-top beers. They have to put in some non-fermentable sugars. They use some Belgian candy sugars, and that smooths out the body and makes it a little sweeter without having just this big, rich, thick beverage. So 26, 46, either way. I mean, I don't get hops. Does anybody get hops?
Do you pasteurize?
We bottle condition everything, except for kegs. So all of our beers are bottle conditioned, which is that secondary fermentation in the bottle. So they add that dose of yeast at the end, and that will create more carbonation and mellow out that body a little bit and preserve the beer in its natural state without doing the pasteurization. And we don't add syrups or unnatural type flavors. Everything that you're tasting is coming off of the yeast, the spices, and if we were using a fruit like an orange peel, you would taste that, but not particularly in this beer. But it's not like we add those syrups or those flavors. Yes?
Do you dry hop any of your beer?
We do. We actually have a newer beer called Hop House, and that beer is dry hopped. And that's a Belgian pale ale, which we probably don't see a lot of. Like the Houblon Chouf is another Belgian style pale because of the Americans love our hops. And we have seen this in all of the pales and IPAs available and flooded into the market, and everything's as hoppy as it can be. And then we start seeing these session IPAs because we want to drink these big hoppy beers, but we don't want to be hammered, thank you. Or just, you want to drink more than 1 or 2 beers. You don't want the palate wreckers. I mean, we've been all over the place with hops. We're trying all these new hops. We have Citra hops are popular. The Calypso hop is big right now. Mosaic, Galaxy, you're getting all these hops. People actually know what that means, and it's so cool. But sometimes it's a little American, but the Belgians have caught on. So now they're playing with hops, and they want to feed into what our palates are looking for. So we have a couple more hoppy beers on the horizon. We just released a beer, just had a couple of kegs in the market called Calypso Hennepin. Hennepin's one of our year-rounds named after Father Hennepin, who was an explorer in that region of the upstate New York, Hudson Valley, that whole region. And so we are going to do a series with Hennepin trying different hops. And Duvel has a beer out called Triple Hop. And Duvel Triple Hop will change in June, and it'll be an Equinox hop. So,
hey Laura,
yeah.
Feel free to elaborate a little bit on the Calypso Hennepin. I have the keg in the cooler right now.
Perfect!
Ooh, as soon as we have it open the spot, it's going to go on. And how many kegs are working?
10. So Chad was on our good list this year. I'm just kidding. And we're excited to bring it in because we wanted to just see what the You know, a lot of these beers are new to the market and people don't really know what maybe hennepin is yet. And Calypso hops are another New Zealand hop. So are you familiar with that style, those hops? Anybody? Okay, so just a couple. So does anybody drink wine? Because a lot of the awesome. So Belgian beers are really great with wine, the wine connoisseur, and they really kind of play to that palate because there's so many different flavors and complexities, and the way Belgium is located in Europe, you've got France that's really wine forward, and you've got Germany that's known for beer, and Belgium has all these awesome crazy beers, and they play to both customers. But back to hops, so the hops right now that are huge, the New Zealand hops have a lot of the same flavors that you'll find in like a Sauvignon Blanc wine. So those grassy, grapefruit, citrusy flavors, it's kind of where our palates are going. So we've had these big Pacific Northwest hops that are really known to be piney and resiny and, you know, just bold and spicy. And now you've got these big citrus hops. Calypso is the same flavor profile. So it's really citrusy. So you take a hennepin, which is a saison style, and then you add this extra citrus profile to it in the hop, and it's delicious. So I don't know when you're going to tap that keg, but hopefully I've tempted you to, if you like those profiles, in a saison.
Probably be ready for next Tuesday for the beer of the month. So next Tuesday you can buy that beer and you get a really cool glass to go with it.
Who doesn't love it?
Glasses are really cool. We have some really cool little goblets that are like 8-ounce goblets. They're the cutest little things ever.
Oh, very good. We're really into our glassware, so you'll probably see even more coming over the next couple of years as we keep growing this business. So, okay, so Calypso hops in the hennepin. Again, hennepin's one of our year-rounds, a saison style. Gnomegang's a year-round. It was 750s and draft only. It was originally a seasonal. Now it's available year-round, and we just brought 750s back, so you can get it package and draft. So it's really done well for us. I mean, I think the great thing about Belgian beers is they're not so sweet that you can't keep drinking them. They actually quench your thirst. There's a lot of flavors in there and a lot of aromas that make you want to keep drinking it. It's not like it's syrupy and sugary. It's sweet enough and tasty enough, and there's just so much. Every time you drink it, you might pick up something else. And then when you're having it with food, it might change a little bit, and you taste something else that you really like.
These are very complex. Are there any of these that are tasting either?
Great question. 3 Philosophers. Are these any of the beers that you're tasting that are so complex good for aging? And yes, the 3 Philosophers, we actually age it for you as well. And we just brought out, this is package only, but we have a cellared set that we just brought in. So right now it's the 2011, 12, and 13.
So you can buy a vertical? You
can buy a vertical. We already did it for you. And then in the fall, we'll bring out 12, 13, 14. So for right now, that could change. But so does any, I mean, Chad, you could order those. They're available in package, but what's that?
I can.
You can. It's a vertical package if that's something you wanted to do. And then if anybody goes to Microfest, does anybody attend Microfest? Okay, awesome. So we're going to have the vertical at Microfest, just FYI, if you find the Ommegang tent.
Stuff like that, if you guys buy that stuff here, honestly, buy a vertical flight of 3 bottles. I mean,
let's ask them after they've had 3 Philosophers. Because, well,
just curious.
Yeah, no, it's a great question because it's, you know, this is the crowd you wouldn't normally bring this in here.
Normally buy and sell really, but if you guys want stuff like that, I mean, you can buy that thing at home. You don't have to sit here and drink it all. So
maybe after they have some 3 Philosophers, they'll like, yes, I'm definitely in. So I lost my train of thought. That's what happens when you're drinking and talking, right? Microfest, I know. Our tent, we're going to have that beer. It'll come back to me in like 5 minutes. Year rounds, we do 7. With something about that, I don't know. I'll remember. The aging, the 3 Philosophers. It was something to do with that, Chad. Because, you know, hops the flavors, the aromas will go away. So hoppy beers aren't great to age. You want to drink them when they're fresh. Hops are best when they're fresh. That's why people like the dry hopping or the green hopping. They want those flavors as fresh as can be because that's when they taste or smell the best. So the longer the bottle sits, the less hop presence you'll have. So the bigger maltier beers, like the Three Philosophers, that are also the higher ABVs, those are going to be better for cellaring, and they will stand time well, but they'll also change in the bottle. And the yeast will change the profile of the beers, but it has nothing to do with what the hops are doing. And those hops are such a low bittering hop that you don't even taste them.
Unless
they're just balancing.
All the acids, if you do the high beta acid, then those don't go bad.
Well, and like in the Three Philosophers, there's hops, but it's not part of what you're tasting, and it's not part of what's changing in the bottle. It's those big malty. It's interesting if you don't, like saison Brett, or any beer with Brett, and Ommegang does an upside down brown that's out right now, and that has a Brett yeast in it, which is that funky yeast, and that changes so much. And that yeast is really what's changing in those beers, and that's what's changing the profile of the beer versus the hops or the malt. It's that yeast flavor evolving, if you will. It's either, if you have it when it first comes out, it's going to be really fresh and really bold, and you'll taste a lot of it, just like a hoppy beer. And as time goes on, the flavors will change. They'll mellow out sometimes, or they'll just fade away, and you'll taste something different, completely different. That's why the verticals are very popular, and people like to do the side-by-sides to see what's happened over time. I'm not a brewer, so I'm not a total expert on what happens with the acids in the hops, but I do know what our brewers tell us, and anything that's been released is basically been aged for you, and they want you to drink it now. So, Three Philosophers will cellar, but most of our beers, they want you to drink them when we've released them because we've done all the barrel aging, or we've done the fermentation aging, we've done everything for you. All right. Kelly Boozer, if I forget anything, jump in.
Okay.
This is your favorite beer, isn't it? Rare Voss. All right. So I know that as you drink more, people get louder. This is a really quiet room to start, though. I'm really impressed, though, because you're very interested. The rules have been established.
I kind of got in trouble a little last week for telling people to be quiet, and it was kind of lame, but this class is doing awesome. It's very impressive. I
am too. And what's amazing is that, back to my original opening scenario, in 1980 there were 8 craft breweries. So majority of our population drank light lager beer. So that's what happened in the 70s, is that's where our profile and our taste went, and in the 80s it started to swing because people were homebrewing to try and bring these traditional old world styles back to life, and that's what they wanted to drink, and the only way to have those beers was to homebrew, and homebrewing is really was the catalyst for the craft brewing industry. So, and homebrewing today is amazing how many people are involved. There's homebrewing stores, and so many people are educated on what you're tasting in these beers. But if you think about these styles, these go back thousands and thousands of years. Of course, they've evolved a little bit. The ingredients have changed. The ABVs have changed, because some of these Belgian-style beers, they couldn't drink the water, so these beers were brewed to be able to have something to drink, whether it was when they were working in the fields, in the monasteries, wherever it was. They were brewing beer to survive, in a sense. And so if you think about these styles, it's pretty amazing, because now we're really just getting engaged in the Belgian style beers and these big complex beers. So I think that's pretty cool, because this is what they drink every day. So again, they were lower ABVs because they weren't hammered all day long, because they probably wouldn't have gotten anything done. I don't know, maybe they were partying all day long. So Rare Voss. So again, back to when Don and Wendy started the brewery, they had lived in Belgium for 3 years. So this beer is named after a cafe in Brussels, so it also translates to the Sly Fox. So that's what this name of this beer is, Rare Voss, Sly Fox. So if you are able to look at the labels of the beer, every label tells a story. So it kind of tells you what this particular beer name is. So you can see the fox sitting in the cafe. chasing, I believe, the pigeon. So it's a Belgian amber style ale. So how many people are into amber ales? Okay. I'm impressed because that is not a big style right now. I mean, if you look at any of our sales trends and any of the beers that we're competing against on the Ommegang side or the Boulevard side, ambers aren't a big segment for us, but I think the Belgian amber ale is incredible. What a great soft malty beer again. You're still getting a lot of flavor. You're getting different flavors out of the yeast.
How many people in the class have never had rare boss until right now? Never had rare boss. Wow, that's more than I was expecting.
There is 6.5% on this one, so it's a little more sessionable in the Belgian category. A lot of these malts are a blend of different malts, like the caramel malts, the Pils malts. A lot of the color, obviously, is coming from the malt, and you get that caramely character. So I think that's the difference between this one and Gnomegang, is just really what the flavors from the malt are giving off to you. Do you taste that? A little more of that caramely, maybe a little more sweet to me. It doesn't have that shoofy, so it doesn't have that spicy, that really big spiciness that I found in the Gnomegang. Everyone perceives different flavors, so I'm not right or wrong. And what you're tasting is, because there's so much going on, you might taste something totally different. Or you're eating and you might taste something different. All right, so a little more copper color in this beer. I think if you've noticed how, especially in my glasses, when they're pouring these nice big heads, they're really nice and golden, and then it has that big tan head. It has a lot of effervescence, and do you get that? It's like a really big, almost bubbly characteristic in these beers, and that actually, the carbonation and those big effervescence characteristics help. Well, that's why eating with these beers is amazing, because it actually cleanses your palate. So carbonation is a good thing in beer, and that's why we like to pair it, because when you take a drink and you eat your food, take another drink, that carbonation will actually help cleanse the palate, so you can go back and see what changes in the food. What other questions about rare Voss? So an amber, Belgian amber style. This is a very quiet group. I mean, I feel like you got in trouble. But Chad said he got in trouble. Okay, so, what's that?
You got in trouble after we got in trouble.
After you got in trouble. Okay. Well, feel free to ask questions, because I can talk to you all day long, but I want to make sure I'm talking to you about what you want to know. Yes.
What's the deal with the Yoda name? Why the brewery and then the name? It's like,
so that's a great question, and if you go, and I haven't been to Belgium yet, my boss has, and he's, I think, out there, but it's brewery and then the name. So Ommegang means to walk about. So in the Belgian breweries, it's always brewery and the name. So to honor that. So Ommegang means to walk about, which is a festival in Brussels that dates back to the 1500s, and it's when the King Charles V came to Brussels. So that festival's been going on since then, and it means that's what it's the Ommegang festival. So if you Google it, it's in Brussels, and it means to walk about. But all the brewery names, it's like the spelling's different, but it's brewery, and then wherever that brewery's either located or whatever the name is, and ours happens to be Ommegang. So everything, because they lived there and they wanted to really bring the culture back. If you notice, like the name of the brewery, the names of the beers, not just the styles, but it is all about bringing this Belgian culture. Again, I haven't been there yet, but I'm very excited to go, because if you look up beer styles, Belgium is really known for making amazing beers, and they have a lot of, they have over 600 breweries in just one town or one region. So, I mean, they're definitely known for making amazing beers. A lot of Belgian fans in here, like true Belgian beers. I mean, I think that is growing, and you'll start to recognize more of the actual true Belgian beers. American craft breweries are doing a lot of Belgian beer styles. But again, Brewery Ommegang they were the first brewery to really start brewing 100% Belgian beers.
The breeders, they limited, they just stay in one city, and so what was it?
No, I'm not sure. because I've never met them, I don't have all the details, but they were there right out of college, and I don't know who they worked for, so that's a good question. I'll have to find that out.
Hey, Laura, you remember to repeat the questions?
Oh, yes. Forgot, sorry. So your question was, where did they live, and did they stay there the whole time? And I'm not sure. So the parallel for us is being a part of all these breweries now. So there's Brewery Ommegang and Boulevard in the United States. We have Schoof, we have Liefmans, we have Duvel, we have De Koning, we have Meerdsoo in Belgium. That's all. We're all under the same umbrella of Duvel Mortgat. But Michel Mortgat, who runs the company, he's let every brewery do their own thing. So he's let Brewery Ommegang remain true to what they've done since 1997, and he's owned it since 2003. And they haven't changed that culture. Boulevard's the same way. Boulevard's still doing what they do. But John McDonald started Boulevard because he toured Europe and fell in love in, this is kind of cool, in some cafes drinking Belgian-style beer. And the reason he came back and started homebrewing was exactly the reason why people were homebrewing in the late 70s, early 80s, is because they were experiencing these beers and these styles and these amazing flavors, and they wanted to drink these at home, so they had to home brew. And then they started breweries and started making money off of it. So Don and Wendy were doing this with Belgian beers. John was doing this, and he started his brewery with pale ale, but he fell in love drinking Duvel and beers like that. So that, you know, to come full circle and be a part of all that is really cool for us too. So, okay, what other questions? Yes?
So I have this
Rare Voss
on tap, and then I just had it from the bottle, and it was a pretty huge difference.
What did you taste different?
Carbonation actually
in the bottle?
No.
On draft?
Yeah.
Okay.
The bottle was a lot, I think a little more spear, malty, mellow.
Did you just have this now? Or like you have a bottle with you?
Well, I just drank it.
Okay. So you're over there having a really good time. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, so we bottle condition the bottles, which also can create carbonation, but on draft, we're pushing CO2 into those kegs to pour them. Sometimes when the keg is at different levels, that will change what you're tasting in the carbon, and as far as the carbonation goes. You might have a keg that's brand new and a bottle that's a couple months old. That can sometimes be the difference between the two flavor profiles. Ideally, we don't have a significant difference. So I would actually want to see the bottle just to make sure we're not looking at something that's maybe a little older and it has mellowed or kind of some of the flavors have gone away. I doubt it because all of our beers are pretty new in the market. But you never know. It's a quality thing, and that's something that we actually would take back to the breweries and say there was a major difference in the taste, besides the carbonation. But again, age can be a factor. Temperature can be a factor, how it was stored. Thank you. You know, light can be a factor on beer. It's not a factor on keg beer. Storage on keg beer can change. If it's stored warm, cold. Between our distributor and here, it's probably maintained at a cold temperature. But the bottles sometimes can, the temperatures fluctuate. They're stored at room temperature. They're bottle conditioned at room temperature, controlled temperatures. But
Serving temperature?
usually they're stored at about 70 degrees for the fermentation to work. What's that?
When they serve them, I know it says it should be served at 40.
Oh, they're serving temperature. Yeah, I'm trying not to throw, I don't know. I don't know how it was stored. Andrew! I have our distributor rep here and our other brewery reps, so I'm going to make them answer the question. I mean, time and temperature can be factors. Hopefully, if it's that significant, if you were bothered by it, you would actually just contact.
Just kidding.
Just forward it.
I mean, it's, our job as breweries is to control quality and to make sure that doesn't happen. There's factors that can change it, but we hope it doesn't happen. So in this situation, it does, and we would look at the bottle and kind of work back from there and see if there was something that happened in during the transportation of the package. Okay, so I don't have a lot of Game of Thrones fans in here. Oh, yeah, that's right, I do. Okay, so again, I've been told to sum up Game of Thrones, it's medieval porn. So I'm not sure if that's the case, but I have a lot of head shaking, so I think maybe it is. Okay, so the HBO came to brew Ommegang because they really liked what they were doing and asked them to brew these beers. This is called Three-Eyed Raven. So medieval porn went over well. That's.
She can't handle it.
Okay. So next session, when I say that, that'll be interesting after a couple more beers. Okay, so Three-Eyed Raven, a dark saison. So not really a true to style because it's a dark beer meeting a saison, so it's not a pure saison. Are you familiar with saison styles? So they're usually like golden and kind of pale. So obviously this has a lot of dark color from the malt and the wheat. We actually use midnight wheat in this beer, and rye. And rye, does anybody know what rye does to beer? Because if you're tasting this, you know, and medieval porn really went over well. If you're tasting this beer, that is awesome. I'm glad that that one went over so well. So this is 7.2%, and what rye does to beer is makes it spicy. When you're drinking it, I don't taste rye. You don't taste that, you know, flavor that you think of when you think of rye or caraway. It's just a nice spiciness that it gives to it. Yes, ma'am. Gingerbread, that's what she's tasting. Interesting. I taste like the dark fruit, so you're getting like raisins, a little bit of cherry, a little chocolate maybe. It doesn't have the dark roasted flavors, because I think when people see dark beer, they immediately go to that. So if you drink stouts and porters, you know what I'm talking about. It has that big roasted coffee chocolate flavors. And this is from that midnight wheat and some other malt, so it's not, I get more fruit, chocolate, spicy, it's smooth, it's dangerously smooth to me. Again, 7.2, it's not big, but that's still a lot of ABV. We just released it for this 5th season of Game of Thrones. So this is the first time we've done a dark saison. So what do you think? Interesting?
It is interesting.
I know, as you drink it, you also taste, I taste different flavors and the spice from the yeast. It's changing, it evolves. Yes?
So what's your definition of a saison?
The history or a definition?
Categorically, what are some attributes?
So historically it was brewed to drink as their water. So historically it was actually a lower ABV, it was more bready, cracker-like. It had malt, and that was easy. I'm trying to compare it to some other saisons I know now today, like we do one in the Boulevard side, Tank 7. That's a farmhouse ale. That's a saison style. Usually they're peppery. Sometimes you can get a little even grapefruit. You can get, what's that? Bright. They're bright. Thank you. It has that golden color. You know, it's not hoppy. So they're thirst quenching. They're refreshing. What's that?
Is it the yeast type?
It's both. It's the yeast and the malt, because they were originally brewed as their sustenance almost. I know you're like coaching me on how to say this for you. So if I'm missing a characteristic, throw it in. Next beer.
Starting to run out of time a little bit.
Yeah, I know, because we started a little late.
It's okay. Yeah, it's all right. Take your time. Are you blaming me? I was talking too much.
Well,
It's okay.
it happens. I'm drinking and talking. Yes.
What's the name of the fourth beer?
So you're drinking 3 Philosophers. This is your beer. This is the beer that you just received. I just got mine. So 3 Philosophers. This is our #1 selling beer at Brewery Ommegang. There are 3 images on the bottle. So it's Michel Morcat, who owns the company, and Phil Leinart, who is the current brewmaster, who actually is friends with Florian from Urban Chestnut and brewed at Anheuser-Busch. So that's how he was trained. And then Randy Thiel, who was one of the first brewers for Ommegang. So those are the 3 Philosophers. The 3 Philosophers, I don't know, I can't tell you the history of where that name originally came from right now, but I'm running out of time anyway, so.
Could you repeat the second person's name?
Phil Leinart. We asked him to be here today, but because it's Craft Brewers Conference in Portland, all of our brewers are up there, so that's why you got me. Okay, so a Belgian quadruple. So what's unique about this beer, this 3 Philosophers, there's 2% of our Leafman's Creek or Cuvée Brut in this beer. Cuvée Brut is brewed on cherry, sits on cherries for the flavor. So you're going to get this big malty beer. It's 9.7%. It's a big beer, big Belgian yeast, a lot of those fruit, dark fruit flavors. You get a little bit of that cherry, a little bit of chocolate. This is the best beer for pairing with food, and this is the best beer to age that we make. And again, our #1 seller, I've lost mine. So that was my 3-eyed raven. There is something really special about this beer because of that Leafman's Creek, and so it makes it so unique. A lot of fruit, a lot of spicy, fruity esters in that beer. I like hearing feedback. I don't like just talking. So what are you tasting? Do you like this beer? Do you agree? It's a really amazing, unique style with the quadruple / a little bit of creek in there. It's yummy. Dangerously yummy. You know, those Belgian yeast flavors, it's fruity esters. So what makes a banana taste like a banana is an ester. So Belgian yeast, banana, bubblegum, clove, it gives off those type of flavors. But then you've got the fruit and you've got the little bit of cherry, and that's what I was going to say earlier. If you don't go to the sour beer class, you're making a big mistake, because we do sour beers, and that's a growing category, and to really be able to appreciate them, you want to try them and kind of graduate into those flavors. If you just pick up a sour beer and start drinking it, like something like this, and just start drinking it, you're not going to get all the flavors, and it's going to turn you off. So you have to really start slow and appreciate what sour beers can be. Because Leafman's is our brewery in Belgium, and we do sour beer over there. Actually, it's an open fermentation, kind of a natural souring with those lactic acid flavors, which gives it that almost sweet tart, bubbly flavor. So sometimes sour doesn't always mean vinegar. So I'm encouraging you to go to the sour class. Back to 3 Philosophers. So I got yummy. What else?
Sort of molasses.
A little bit of that molasses. So we use the dark sugars in the beer. So it gives it that sweetness without making it too rich.
Do you use unrefined sugars like turbinado?
I'm not sure. That's a great question. I know I'm not sure.
Because they have the richness.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't, yeah.
But not quite.
I'm not sure. It's not sugary, it's not syrupy, it's not super rich, it's mellow. I like to say soft. It's mellow, it's got an awesome flavor to me.
I've noticed that with a lot of
that's what it
is. It the water? Because they're all soft.
You know, in all of my research with this brewery, a lot of these malts, and maybe it's the water and the chemistry of it all, but these soft malts too. We're not using anything that's giving off these big flavors or these big rich, no, nothing about this.